How many times have you failed?
Plenty.
Tell me your biggest fail.
Well, the biggest fail was right from the get-go. The most important thing is about any record, you have to tell your listeners why they should care about that record. I'd rather hire someone that had a failed startup than someone who was just executing someone else's vision.
When do you know is a good time to call quits on a project?
Great question.
Didn't even realize that you were a touring artist as well. Like, I don't know why I skipped on this, but I didn't realize you were part of Don't Blink.
Yep.
How long has that been going?
Don't Blink, we started in 2018. Before I had my own solo project, Alex as well. Alex actually messed up his knee a bit during the summer. He has like a meniscus tear right now. So actually for like this upcoming tour, which is this quarter, I'm going to be by myself, which is even tougher now. Because usually we can like bounce off each other, but you know, he'll be fine. He has surgery actually this week, so let's hope that all goes well. But yeah, I mean, Don't Blink is going really good. This year has been insanely great for us. We are actually in the top 101 producers ourselves this year. I swear it's unbiased. It's all data driven. But we had huge support. We had like the Mouthpiece, Vintage Culture, Art Mob. You name it, like Dom Dollar, they all played our stuff this year, so we're really fortunate. Yeah,
that's amazing, man. Yeah, I was literally like completely oblivious. That's my fault. You know what it's like in this industry. It's like there's so much going on.
It's actually tough doing ADE, you know, because some people know me as Oskar from Songstats, some people know me as Oskar from Don't Blink, some from Oskar at 1001. It's usually I try not to wear all the hats all at once. I learned that pretty early, you know. This has actually been our 10-year anniversary for 1001 Tracklists, for the top 101 producers, but then also for me going to ADE. So the first time I was 21, now I'm 31. Actually, it changed so much in that time.
Yeah.
Also the way that I like approach a conference like this, you know, at the beginning you're hustling, you know, as an artist. You try to give all the labels your USB, and then like as the years progress, like at some point more people come to you, you set a meeting in advance, and now we have our own big events, you know, people are coming to us, and I'm pretty much just in a way following. I was thinking about this the other day, you sort of start to follow the money trail in a way, you know. Now the meetings that I'm setting up are like with bigger and bigger companies to set up bigger corporate deals for the future and stuff, or bigger partnerships. So it's really interesting how that progresses, you know, over the time. But yeah, usually I try not to confuse people when I meet them for the first time too much, and I just wear one hat, and I'm either there for my artist project, or I'm there for Songstats, you know, or for 1001, depending on what the meeting is about.
It's a really interesting point, and it was something that I was going to bring up. I had JK on, Justin Khan, which you're probably aware of, and he kind of went from the tech world to the artist world after he made an absolute boatload of money. But he kind of doesn't play two hats. He just plays, when he's in artist mode, he's in artist mode. And then when he's doing VC stuff, he's doing VC stuff. You're like, the thing is, your business is so engraved in Songstats, Tracklist, 1001 Tracklist. It's so ingrained in your artist project as well, right? How do you separate that?
It's the toughest question of them all, you know. I want to say on the day-to-day, I'm no longer much involved in 1001 Tracklists. We did launch a new label this summer in a joint venture with Tomorrowland called 1001 Recordings. And I was certainly like quite involved in that, in getting that off the ground and developing it. And now I'm one of the A&Rs as well for the label, and we keep developing that. But it's also, you know, we have a great team now with the Tomorrowland team, and Jacob puts a lot of work in it. So by now, we're getting more in a routine with it. I do help out, of course, with like the events, for example, now, where I'm needed. But I want to say on the day-to-day, most of my day work goes into Songstats, because that's, of course, a pretty sizable business as well now with, I think we're now 12 people. And it's constantly in a way, you know, when I feel I need it where there's like a bottleneck, you know. If someone needs to get some designs approved, I'll make sure that I'm looking at that next thing so that they can move on with their work. In the same way, if there's some bug that is causing some issues for a lot of users, we try to put all the resources into this right now, right? So there's not like a like very routine that we have, like I would say week to week. What we do is sort of like our Monday meeting, which is like a stand-up essentially for all of our team, where everyone sort of comes together, talks about how last week went, how the next week goes, and what they need for that week or who they want to coordinate with, which is super helpful for everyone to be on the same page and also learn what others in the teams are working on. I think that's been super helpful. And then, yeah, I mean, I allocate my time for Don't Blink where I can. Of course,
Ooh,
there's also the great thing that I also have Alex to work with, and now we also have a new
yeah.
manager, Peter. And in a way, I am currently the performing artist more or less because Alex is out of commission for the time being. But I am in the studio maybe two days a week. And then I'm also working more on the business side of the project. Getting the records signed, setting them out, setting up the tours and all the more more corporate bits, I would say, because of course connections and all these things are in place
Of
already. But
course.
yeah, I want to say that that's probably more of like my second job that I would probably do more at the nighttime in a way. But then again, it shifts back and forth, and I love to work and I love the process, and every day there's something new to figure out. So it's always a grind though.
No, I love it, man. I totally get it. But I the thing that I really love about it, and I talk about this now and again, but it's more of a personal conversation that I have with like newer artists that are coming through. And it's more so of can I do multiple things in my career? Do I have to be, can I just be the artist? Can I still do whatever I do on the side or whatever my main job is? And it's, for me, it's like, it's such a interesting rhetoric that goes on in the industry. And I think it's like, if you're not doing the artist thing full time, then you're not a proper artist. And I really struggle with it because I completely disagree with it. I think, especially nowadays, is being an artist is so much harder, and you need finances to fund being an artist. It costs so much to be an artist. And I
Yeah, it's
think
true.
having having a job on the side or having another business that can help fund and help generate business for your artist career is like key. I think it's like rule number one nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. Sometimes I also wonder, let's say I didn't have Songstats in 1001 and all my time was dedicated to purely Don't Blink. I would say, yeah, I could grind harder. I would put more dedication into it. And of course, to some degree, if that's the one thing that you do, you want to make sure you're successful with it, right? The thing about it is that my personal interest is always in this like cross section of tech and music. So I have so much fun building song stats, and actually like a lot of inspiration and a lot of the things that I learn, I then apply to Don't Blink or to, for example, the way that we run Low Ceiling now, which is also a record label that we run. And like a lot of the same mechanics that we use for one business, I now apply to the others. And in a way, there was a really big shift now in the way that we approach Don't Blink that has shifted more over the course of this year. And that was our biggest year ever yet. And that had also, I think, a lot to do with the way that we now approach Don't Blink way more from not just being producers and making music, but much more as well of telling a greater story of like talking about what our beliefs are, what does our music stand for, and what do we want to achieve with our music, and where do we fit in? Because ultimately, if you think of like any of the bigger artists that you really like, I think you can answer these questions of what makes them so special. And that was really difficult for us to find out, like what are we as Don't Blink, and in a way now that becomes more and more clear. It's obviously never set in stone, but I don't know, I think it all comes off of each other, and of course the finances play a big role as well in it. I think as of right now, I think Don't Blink would maybe break even in everything that we do, but it wouldn't allow us, to like I think we would need to hustle much more and take much more gigs to fill up the calendars, and it would be much more stressful as well. So in a way, we're in a sort of more prestigious position because we can afford to not take on everything, right? So I think it goes both ways. Yeah,
I totally agree that if you were doing it 100%, you would have more time to grind, right? And you would have more time to just focus on that one project. But I also think when you don't have as much time, the time that you do spend doing what you need to do on a certain project can actually be more effective because you're just being more efficient and you're just getting the shit done. I remember when I used to work full time and I wasn't working full time in music, and like my time was so scheduled that I just had to get done. And it actually got me to the point of where my music was full time. Like you said about telling stories is so important nowadays. And being able to kind of put who you are out to the world. We all know that music doesn't actually make you a big artist nowadays. It's a part of the parcel. It's the overall story of who you are, mixed in with a bit of associations and quite a bit of luck, is pretty much the like what the journey to become a full-time artist nowadays.
If you think about it, it's like, why do people follow you? I mean, the music, I said that I think before in some podcasts, and it's becoming a meme, but the music is not your product, right? It's just advertising in a way for you, and you are the product. So ultimately you have to think about, like, who are you? What is your character? What's your story? What can fans hook onto? And ultimately, maybe if someone sees you on social media for the first time, there's maybe a few key aspects of why they choose to follow you. Maybe they find you attractive, or maybe they find you funny and entertaining, or maybe they find you really educational. There's a lot of like these interesting initial triggers. But then in order to follow you more, actually podcasts are a great way where probably your audience gets to know you now very, very well through this podcast. They know a lot about you, and they love your perspective, and they love the questions that you ask, and they love the guests that you invite, and they trust you with all of this. So out of this platform, probably also your music career can grow on the back of this, because people feel a connection to you, and they know how you approach things and how you grow. I think having a platform like this is super, super helpful and super valuable, right? And I think every artist needs to discover what that is for themselves, right?
Yeah, and it kind of also goes back to what we were saying about having a job. It's like, what is the other part of you as an artist, right? It's like, I can probably pick a handful of people that artists that I would say are just artists and just surviving off their amazing music. But they're not new in this game. They're older heads, and they're just legends, if that makes sense. So like Maceo Plex comes to mind for me. Is like,
I saw him actually really, like 2 days ago.
Right,
warming up for Camel Fat was amazing.
Yeah, he's an amazing DJ. He is one of the best producers out there, in my opinion. But you don't know anything else about him.
Not much, no.
There's still the allure of the artistry in that, which I think, I don't know, it's pros and cons, right? It's like in a world where everyone has the ability to know everything about everyone, when I like, we're similar ages. I remember growing up and like not knowing a single thing about DJs, and like it was kind of romantic about that. Like we couldn't reach out to the artist, but nowadays we can. And I think people want actual connection with the people that they're spending money to go and buy tickets to watch, because there's so much option out there.
Yeah, I think it might have been easier a few years ago. You call them now legends, when the field wasn't as saturated and when social media wasn't as important yet, to start growing sort of a career based off purely your music or cool branding. But now I think it's much more difficult, because There's so many artists that want to become and grow their career. You can do it maybe mysteriously with a mask. You can do it maybe purely analog and tell a story like this. You could do it fully off the back of AI maybe nowadays, but you always have to tell that story. You always need to tell that story so people understand what you stand for, right? Otherwise, it just won't go unnoticed now, I think. And yeah, it's actually interesting because I find the DJs intriguing that I don't know so much about. And then when I see them perform live, I actually don't know much. I don't even know where they're coming from. And it's awesome when they play a great set. That really surprises me. And that's what events and big festivals are great for, where you not just see the artists that you've already seen 4 or 5 times and that you of course know in and out, but when you get surprised by a set that you have no idea who that artist is, and then they absolutely blow your mind, right? That's amazing.
That's the best thing about this world that we live in, though, right? Is that realistically, although we say the music is just part of the product or part of the marketing, there is still an amazing thing that we do as artists and as promoters and as tech people in this industry, and we're creating experiences with people, and that's still I think that actually gets forgotten a lot of the time, because it's become such a business focused industry, and when I say business, finances, I think that's what gets forgotten a lot of the time, is what are we actually providing? We're providing people escapism to enjoy their lives. It's such a weird balance. And I was talking to a friend in the industry yesterday, and I feel like it becomes more and more difficult nowadays because there is so much business to be done in the industry. I don't know about you on the artist side of things, but how do you feel that?
Yeah, I think it's rough now because I think if you look at it like the bigger festivals, for instance, right, they have a big budget for the headliners because the headliners
Yeah.
are the ones that sell the tickets. But then the budgets are being like allocated 90% to like the few names on the top of the lineups, and then afterwards they're just like they have a couple of thousands to spend on all of the support, on all of the local support, on all of the emerging artists. And I find it almost the balance is a little bit off now, where the really big names get so much, and then like all the up and coming talent really struggles to like make a living off of their craft. It is very saturated. It's also tough nowadays to monetize content. I mean, it is possible through platforms like YouTube. With music, though, unless you get all the licenses for each of your own tracks as well, and get your own channel like whitelisted and all of these things, most of it gets claimed right away by the label. So it's not easy. And touring has traditionally been always the number one income stream for artists. But also travel gets expensive. Now we're 2. If you need to multiply every flight and every hotel room by 2, it doesn't get cheaper, right? So the economics of the industry are often not in the favor of emerging talent unless you really have a big breakthrough, and that usually happens nowadays only if you go viral somehow on TikTok or Instagram or some social media with either a track or a cool video or something. That's the biggest shot that a lot of artists have. Or if you have insanely great consistency. And I think there's only room every year, I would say, for maybe like 2, maximum 3 artists within like, I would say like a greater subgenre that really can make that step up. And that's it. And then maybe the next year there's room for another 2 or 3 that can make that step.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it just moves faster than it ever did before. And people don't just want music. They want other things for people to talk about. And why should we book you? Why should we sign you? Why should we do that? Blah, blah, blah. I tell you what, if I was starting out now, I wouldn't want to be doing it. So I take my hat off to anybody that's doing
You really
it.
got to do it for the dedication and the love of the music. I got to tell you that.
Yeah. Again, that's the thing, right? And I think we're coming from it in a point of view where we have business in the music industry. I remember when I first started, don't get me wrong, I always wanted to be the biggest DJ in the world, and I still do. Right? That's not going to ever go away. Yeah, I knew that I was going to be full-time in music, but did I ever think I'd be here today? Like, it's taken me since I was 15 years old. I'm now 35. Like, it's taken me 20 years to get to where I'm at. Do you think there's an issue with the rhetoric of nowadays where it's you have to go viral to become successful, and you can have a success overnight? Because realistically, none of our careers got successful overnight. Like, it's taken you since you were 17 years old, right? Or however old you were. Like, it's taken me 20 years to get to here. And I've had so many ups and downs. And I think this is the thing that I'm really struggling with, of like the agents, the managers, the labels, even artists. The rhetoric that we're all talking about is like, oh, we just need a hit record, or oh, we just need a TikTok to go viral, or all this or all that. But it's like we're basing our whole career on luck.
Are you trying to get your music on more playlists? Songstats have just made that way easier. They've got this new tool called Playlist Check, where you can pretty much see how any playlist is performing. And it even grabs the curator's contact details, which is game changing for all of us. Like, this is amazing. When they told me about this, I was like, wow. On top of that, they've teamed up with Submit Hub, Groover, Daily Playlist, Song Rocket, and loads more, which pretty much just allows you to submit your music to any playlist in the world. And the best part of this, you can get 10% off subscription for life using the code word Will Clarke, or just hit the link in the description. If you want your music heard by more people, which we all want, you need to get involved. Songstats, code word Will Clarke, or hit the link in the description.
In a way, yes, but I think you need to create those opportunities for you, right? For some, it happens faster than for others. For some, unfortunately, it almost never happens, you know? In a way, if you knock on doors every day and send your music to 5 labels every day, you know, there's a chance that at one point one will sign it. You know, you need to handle that rejection, and in your way, you got to reframe your mind that the rejection is not like something bad. It's actually like you seeking out like opportunities, right? And then ultimately, you know, I know of a bunch of careers that took forever to kick off. You know, one of my favorite artists is a German guy called Boris Brecher. He makes like really cool techno. He's been making music for like 15 or 20 years before he even became half a bit known, and now he's one of the biggest guys in his like he does everything by himself, like his own tour, his own shows, everything, all off his own back, which is amazing. But it took him 2 decades, you know, to get it started, and he was persistent with it. You know, others, you know, okay, you have your first hit with your first track, and then suddenly you stand behind a DJ deck and you don't even know how to use it. You know, that is strange to me, you know, but that's also how it goes. I mean, ultimately, I can tell I've seen a lot in the industry for a long time, you know. Some of these things are luck, some are also like created, you know. I had meetings now, for example, with Universal, like basically Virgin Records, which have now like changed their name into Intercord. Interestingly enough, I guess it was too close to Virgin Music Group, which is the distribution arm from Universal. But yeah, we were chatting about, you know, the record Piece of Your Heart by Medusa, which was their breakthrough record. Amazing track, but I mean, it got upstreamed to them, and then they take control over like the whole European market with this release. Their initial budget with it was, I think, like 100,000 euros or something, you know, for radio plugging, which seems like a lot. But then as it makes that money back, it unlocks more and more trenches. And over the whole release cycle of this release, they spend over €1 million on promotion on this record, right? So obviously, music, as it, you know, repeats, it becomes like you hear it more and more, and then it becomes sort of like intrinsic, and then everyone knows those records, right? They play in radio up and down. Ultimately, you know, I felt like there was a couple of records, for instance, that when I initially heard them, for instance, of Calvin Harris, where I was a bit like, ooh, this is a strange one. But then you hear it 5 times on the radio, 10 times on the radio, and suddenly like, whoop, it's just in there, you know? So, you know, it's ultimately, there is certain like budgets that can make a record happen, you know, as well. It's not always just luck. Obviously, I always hope that the good music ends up on top, and I think channels like TikTok and stuff can be a good indicator, but they can also be an indicator for just some viral weird sounds. But you know, it is what people want. You know, it is what's funny. So
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that you talk about the majors in that sense, because realistically they have so much control over everything. And although everyone says they don't, they do, because they have the bank account, and the bank account can push that, right? Like, I can guarantee you, not like Calvin is obviously one of the best artists in the world, right? And has had more number ones than Michael Jackson. Like, that's something to say, right?
Insane, yes.
But again, I'm pretty sure he has some losses, right? Like, I'm pretty sure he has some records that don't do that well. However, when you have a label behind you that has the ability to take it to that next level, like, there comes a point when if it doesn't work, then the label's kind of failed. Because again, like you said, is like, how many times do you have to listen to your favorite band's second album before you love it? Like, because you are so in love with that first album, that second album sounds like utter garbage when you first hear it. Because it's not the same as the first album.
It will sound good to you too, you know? If you listen to even a bad track enough, it will sound good. I mean, generally, the weird thing is the majors don't just have money, they also have the leverage, right? Because if you represent such a huge roster of artists, you can negotiate good deals with the DSPs, with Spotify, with Apple Music, or like they renew their agreements with them every couple of years. And I'm certain that like they get some good treatments there from those DSPs to make sure that their artists get good treatment. But ultimately, this is a business for them too. You know, it's the same like, for example, a movie studio. You know, they also invest in each movie and the production of it. Some of them flop. You know, some have a high budget and they don't make it back in the box office. You know, it's the same thing with a track. You spend a lot of money to try and plug it and promote it, and then if you don't make it back, oh well, you know. So obviously you need to have the tracks that work, and ultimately people buy the names. You know, the Calvin Harris on a record definitely sells well. You know, you immediately have that big reach and stuff. You know, I think if a similar track was produced by an artist with almost no followers, it probably wouldn't go anywhere. You know, it's
even
very
by
hard.
You and me. Even by you and me, like if we
Correct.
put out a lot of those records, like even where you're at in your artist career and where I'm at in my artist career, it wouldn't do as well. Like, we know that for a fact.
I think that's the difference though now that we chose, at least for our artist career with Don't Blink, is that we no longer make tracks for hits. We never did. And we also no longer make tracks to get signed to labels. We sort of changed that narrative now where we make music for sets. So all of our sets are only our own production. It's a little bit similar. We talked about Boris Brejcha there for a minute, where we make the music for our sets. So for example, now we have a Thailand tour coming up. Now we work on music for those shows. Then afterwards we go to Australia. So then we work on something more housey. For Thailand, it's maybe a bit more indie dancey, you know. And then we make those records, we play them out, we see how they work. And then if they work well, after that, we can send it to a couple of labels and see if they like it. If they don't like it, we're not signing it to them, you know. We're also pretty notoriously not changing anything about our tracks if the label wants us to. In the end, it's our music, you know. Like, if you don't want it, you don't need to sign it, right? But it's what we are making. I think you have to take a hard stance there, right? So
yeah, and I think that's really important though. And I kind of want to get your views on this, on the business side and the artist side, kind of both brains, because where we're at in the industry right now is that, and you see this with Songstats and 1001, where sonically it's very fashionable, right? Trends come in and out like they always have in music, right? However, what you're saying, we only make records for the club and you make records that you like, which I love to hear that, right? Do you think that's actually a thing nowadays? Or do you think a lot of, especially newer artists and maybe some established artists are going, holy record's done really well, like I need to jump on that bandwagon and make records similar to that, and then I can ride off the coattails?
It's funny that you say that now, because one of the beliefs that Alex and I wrote down when we sort of like did sort of more of like what do we stand for with Don't Blink was to say we're always original, we don't copy ourselves, we don't copy others. And I think this is like something very intrinsic to us. I understand that others like to ride that bandwagon a bit more, but you have to imagine that like a lot of these labels, and I know that now from like the two labels that I'm involved in, which is Low Ceiling and 1001 Recordings, our release schedules are planned ahead already until beginning of next year, you know, at this point. And, if you now send us a record that then gets released, let's say in April next year, and now it's October, then like if you just write a trend, we want to find the record that we think is fresh by the time Miami comes around and Ultra Music Festival comes around, and not the record that uses that offbeat bass line that like has been played all summer long, because probably that trend is over. Maybe now it's going more into minimal deep tech or something else, so that's where it's headed, right? So I think if you're chasing the trend, you will never catch the wave. Ultimately, I think you gotta find your own sound and just stick true with it and find what makes you sort of special, what you like, and just make the music for yourself. Honestly, like make the music that you love. And of course, you can get inspired by cool records that come out. Alex and I keep sending ourselves cool tracks that come out each week just to see sort of what makes them cool. Is there a cool sound? Is there a cool like method in production that we can like maybe apply in our own way or something? There's a lot of inspiration you can draw from all these good producers out there.
No, I totally agree, man. Songstats, let's talk about it.
Heck yeah. Hey, first of all, thanks so much for trusting us and sort of resonating what we're doing to your audience. It's very cool.
No, thank you, man. Like first of all, anybody that's listening, Songstats has been a sponsor for the last couple of months on the podcast, which we really appreciate. And if you want a discount, then go click a link in the bio. I was really excited when you were on board because I've genuinely been a user of Songstats for a very long. I can't remember how long. You'll probably be able to tell me how long I have been because
I sort of looked it up earlier.
You can look it up earlier. Realistically, and you might be able to tell me, and I don't necessarily want to shout out any competition, but I don't know any other competition you guys have in the industry. I'm sure there is, whatever. But from an outsider's point of view, you've built the #1 app for artists and record labels to track their records and social stats and everything like that. So I want to ask why. Why did you start Songstats?
Well, a selfish reason. I thought it would be cool to have. I think a lot of the tools we still build today are quite selfish. Honestly, it's like this was a cool feature that would benefit us, and a lot of us at the team are actually artists. For example, Jack, our CTO, he runs his own indie rock band in New York. Of course, I am on my own artist career. A lot of the guys from 1001Tracklists are involved in Songstats. So actually, originally, Songstats came out of 1001Tracklists. We wanted to create sort of a dashboard that collects all of the data that 1001 collects, which is essentially the DJ supports, and make that available to artists and labels. And we built that. Originally, it was called 1001Tracklists. Very nerdy, very niche, and there was just not enough data for anyone to really like spend a lot of time on that platform. So ultimately, we decided, hey, why not integrate also Spotify and Beatport and SoundCloud? And I think those were the three other platforms besides 1001 that we integrated first. And then off of that, we expanded outside of electronic music with Apple Music and YouTube, and now we do all of the data sources. But yeah, now we relaunched it as Songstats in I think April of 2020, so 5.5 years ago now. And since we launched it as Songstats, it's become like an integral tool to so many artists to use every day, and that's exactly what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to be this like actionable, fun app that really like is sort of addictive to artists because it really pushes them and motivates them to work harder on their music, and that's all there is to it. Yeah,
I think I actually started using it in April 2020 because that's when
amazing.
Because I'm actually looking back. So my first release on my label was like January the 30th. 2020, the record label that I did a licensing deal with, which was it was still under All We Have Is Now, but a good company that were all those guys that were running the label, guys and girls. They were like, get on Songstats. And I was like, what the is Songstats? Tell me about it. And then I signed up because then Hallelujah came out in April. 2020. And yeah, I think I've been on it since.
If you are looking to get into the music industry, whether that's as a producer, DJ, songwriter, or audio engineer, or you just want to learn more about the music craft, Point Blank Music School is the place to do it. They've got courses both online and in person, covering everything you need to know. And if you are a Will Clarke podcast listener, then I'm giving you 20% off any LA or online courses when you use the code word WillClarke20 at checkout. That does exclude the degree programs. So 20% off any LA or online courses. Use the code word WillClarke20 at checkout. Point Blank Music School, power up your music career. Disclaimer, I've also done a course on there and they're amazing. Go check it out. WillClarke20 at checkout.
Was it ever planned to be a business, or was it purely a tool to start out for you for your own artist career? Or was it just okay, here's a load of data. We're seeing a load of data and no one else is packaging this data up for artists or labels?
Initially, with the 1001 track stats idea was really just, hey, let's make it a cool tool for artists and labels. It was free to use. And then once we integrated more of the data side, it sort of, we started to charge like a small subscription fee, because we of course had ongoing server costs, to collect the data and of course to make sure that we can support the team and to keep developing it, right? So initially, I was the one funding most of it, and it grew to a point, the expenses, where it got quite unsustainable for a bit, and there was certainly like a while just before April of 2020 when it was still 1001 track stats, where that ADE before that April was when we were actively looking actually for investors potentially, and seeing if there maybe was like a strategic investment with another company that had some expertise in more of like the, especially within electronic music or, generally in the music tech space that could help us sort of like make that next step. And I gotta say, sort of, I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, but like, sort of interestingly enough, during that time, there was an app that got launched by Universal, which was, I think, called Universal Music Artists or something like this. And it was an app that was purely designed for artists that are signed with Universal, which is not that many, and these are all major label artists, of course. They're really big. And it was really well designed, really well marketed, but it had very little usage, and for especially like a very niche audience that didn't really care about it, because of course, like a Lady Gaga, she doesn't need to look at those statements anymore. She doesn't really care if like she's in a smaller playlist anymore, right? So but what we took from that was like, that was really like the moment when we were like, wow, we got to step up our design game. We got to step up our marketing game. And we sort of really learned from that. And that's sort of, it loops back to what we were just talking about, how you can like absorb all of this and apply it to all the different projects. So we certainly like used that as like as a big, it was sort of a threat at the beginning that we felt. And then we used that to motivate us, and sort of we rebranded Songstats. When Songstats launched, or 1001 Tracklists at the time, we rebranded to Songstats. We made it cool. We made a dark mode. We launched a mobile app. We rebranded it. We marketed it much better. And that really had a huge impact then on our business. And it really sort of showed us a little bit like what we were missing until that point. Because before then, we were just a nerdy tool for some electronic music DJs, right? But with Songstats, then we expanded outside of that just electronic music. By now, I want to say that we have sort of 50-50.
Oh, wow.
Where like half of
That's
it is
amazing.
electronic music, half of it is outside of electronic. Which is also interesting to me, because we have artists signing up. And then during these Monday meetings that I talked about, someone brings up like, oh yeah, did you know this girl from like Colombia just subscribed? She has like 11 million monthly listeners, and I've never heard of her. It's like, okay, that's awesome, amazing, right? So yeah, you never know. In the end of the day, it's sort of having users is the best indicator now for us to decide what we want to work on next. And it's been developing always into the direction that artists wanted us to go into.
No, man, it's absolutely amazing what you built. And now you've just added a bunch more features that are just ridiculous. So radio stats. Talk to me about why you did this. Obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory why, but like, what's the intricacies of doing this? Because I know this isn't easy.
Yeah, it's actually extremely tough.
Yeah.
So this has been on the to-do list since the moment we launched Songstats. And it's been a recurring like request for years. Evan from the 1001 Tracklist team has been requesting it like every month during ADE. We were always hearing it from everyone, you know. But it's not so easily to do. I want to give
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of like technical background on this.
Tell me.
There is a couple of companies that are doing radio monitoring. Radio monitoring is a difficult problem to solve because what you need to do is you need to have a big database of fingerprints on one side. And then you have to have like a huge list of radio stations and their streams on the other side. So think of it of like Shazam running. And let's say you have a database of 10,000 tracks. Cool. And then you have, let's say, like 1,000 stations. So then in real time, whatever is running through those 1,000 stations, you have to cross-check that with like a database of 10,000 tracks. And that's traditionally how fingerprinting is done. You know, you just look at like the fingerprint of that audio and you see if it matches, right? Now, this is very computationally heavy because what happens is it scales exponentially. You don't need just 10,000 fingerprints. You need not just 100,000. You need more than 1 million. You need 10 million. You need 100 million fingerprints at this point because there's so much music out there. And then we are now monitoring 50,000 radio stations. So you need to monitor all of that in real time. And what really enabled this was actually advancements in AI, because AI is actually very good at matching things. So ultimately, the big problem with AI is that it's always a little bit like a black box. So you train a model and then you just have to test it a lot to make sure that it actually works, right? So right now we're very happy with the model that we're on, and it's very accurate. I gotta say as a little disclaimer that we still have small issues with stations that pitch up songs or speed them up, which can especially happen in electronic music. There's like a degree where we are able to detect it. But then if it goes too much, I think this was early YouTube had that same problem with Content ID, where DJs like to, you know, speed up their music or speed up tracks or pitch them up slightly to not fall into the Content ID trap. Of course, YouTube has the best developers, you know, and they probably solved this problem by now. I think they did. We are currently working on a new model that can actually do this. So we're feeding it sort of pitched up songs and pitched down songs to give it sort of reference material into what it, so it can detect this better. But then again, afterwards, we need to test it all, make sure it's better than the one before. So yeah, this was more of like a technical deep dive into all the issues that can come with it, or the challenges that come with it. But we're making great progress with it. And I want to say initially, we had sort of expected that maybe like 20% of our users would be interested in radio data, because we sort of thought like, okay, look at all these artists and DJs, you know, how many of these really care about radio? And we launched it sort of as like an add-on to the regular Songstats subscription. So you can get it as a bundle. So it's sort of been included. But by now we have a much higher saturation. Like I think we crossed over 50%, which is something we never expected. And it is great. And it was basically our big success last year that we launched this, and we're really happy. And I think our users are also really happy that we did, because it's the only tool right now that's out there that can really monitor your whole catalog across all the stations and give you like a full overview, which is super neat.
No, it's amazing. Do you think radio as an artist, and I'm not really talking just electronic now because we're talking Songstats world, do you think radio is still powerful?
I think it is. Especially we talked about the repetition aspect. You know, if you do radio plugging, I know that there's a couple of tools now that do radio plugging. We also, I think, partnered with a few, and so you can get discounts with them. And I think you can actually, if you have a Songstats subscription in the marketing tools, we have like a new benefits page now where we partner with a bunch of companies in the space where you can get preferable rates or discounts for their offerings, which is really cool. So we work with a couple that are plugging to radio. We're also working with a few that are collecting neighboring rights for you. So it's a new income stream, especially with like Sirius XM. They pay very, very well. It's much more than you would think that you get paid for each stream.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm literally on it now, like just like real time. for anybody that's
Amazing.
listening. I've had
there's actually quite a few royalties that can be collected there. Yes.
Yeah, there is. And if you're not set up on the collection, it's actually really interesting because I can literally go into Songstats now and click collect your royalties, and then you sign up all your emails and everything like that. But yeah, for 2 players, $32. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's so the way that neighboring rights work on especially like SiriusXM is that like half of it goes to the rights owner, which is usually the label, and then half of it goes to the artist, which okay, if it's a collaboration it gets split, but if it's just you receive that. And generally like per stream it's somewhere in the ballpark of like $40. And then that gets split in half. So then it's like 20, something like this. So it's actually a sizable amount. If you get on rotation there on a couple of stations, or if you, for example, look what sort of programs are running, there's a couple of DJs that curate shows. They're also, of course, listed on 1001 Tracklists. Like it's very good to try and, sort of send them your promos to get your music on there, because each play on those stations is actually equates to actual income, and royalties that you owed. So of course you need to make sure that you collect them. So we again have a partner there that you can sign up with and collect those royalties. But then generally, you can discover a lot from the radio data, especially a lot of like territorial data, which is really interesting. Maybe there's a bunch of stations in, let's say, South America that are playing your music and you wouldn't know about it. And then that might give you enough leverage to then try and organize a tour there. Or also if a track gets played a lot, I know that, of course, always if you pitch for playlisting, especially with the editorial playlists, you always need to find arguments for the services to promote you, either being at a tour or a Beatport hit or doing really well on radio or you playing at Tomorrowland or whatever it is. There's so many arguments that you can bring, or another big DJ playing it. So ultimately, like song stats or radio stats are sort of collecting all of those arguments for you, so that then you have a better overview of what actually is happening with your music, and you can also use it then to pitch again and hopefully keep growing further, right? So
yeah, definitely. Songstats is kind of turning into this like one-stop shop for literally artists. Like from an outsider's point of view of what it started out, it was a great tool to just find out like instant data of like, oh, I'm doing this, or oh, I'm my record's going here, or this is happening in this country. Now it seems to be like turning more into like a mini label / manager / marketing team. So
yeah, I mean, it's more on the indie side. I think that we try to help artists find, for example, we have all these recommendation tools now, and we thought like, what are interesting tools that only we can build based off of our data. So this started with playlist recommendations, which was actually wrote by Jack, our CTO who runs a band, and he wrote this for himself. He basically queried our database to see what are playlists that are interesting for him to send his music to. So first he had to figure out like, what are playlists that playlist similar kind of music, the same genres, and then of course also which playlists are actually doing well, right? And then do we have contact information for those playlists? So what we started doing is we started then creating this whole playlist recommendations, because that tool that he built for himself initially became so powerful that we were like, hey, we should actually release this, which is cool. Playlist recommendations now sort of integrate all of the big playlist pitching tools. So think of like SubmitHub or Groover, or daily playlists, and there's a bunch of others. So what we are doing is we integrate their playlists, and then we give you their contact information. So when you click on it, it just opens daily playlists, or it opens SubmitHub, so you can immediately pitch to the curator of that playlist. And we give you a good overview of like how often does that playlist update, how long do tracks on average stay in that playlist, like all the interesting information that you should know. And also, so what's the average like popularity of the songs that go in there, so you can like really dive in deep. And then this tool was very popular, so we then expanded this to creator recommendations. So we're now doing the same thing but with creators, because of course the TikToks and Instagrams and YouTubes of the world became so important for marketing and for creating basically free advertising for you, that now we sort of find all of the creators that have previously used similar songs in their reels or in their videos to then, show them to you so you can actually reach out and maybe ask them, hey, don't you want to use my track to create a video or a YouTube short, with a shuffle dance or whatever you do, right? And I think this can be an extremely important tool to leverage. I know that there's other marketing campaigns and other websites out there that charge a lot of money for this. So where you basically run a big campaign and they try to pitch it to like a big network of influencers that they work with. But I mean, we're more of like the do-it-yourself approach. So we're more like a search engine in a way. We know the creators that have previously used music in their videos, and then you can find them, get them recommended to you, and then contact them, right? So it's more of a do-it-yourself approach, but of course, any manager could use it as well. Any artist, of course, hopefully finds good usage in it.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting tool, because even for me, where I have like management, I have label team, I have agents and marketing teams and things like that, I think there still comes a point where as artists, we have to kind of take the bull by its horns and run with it. And being able to have these tools at our hands in one app allows me to go, well, hang on a minute, I've got an hour sat at the airport. Let me go see what creators are popping off right now on social media. Okay, I can go on Songstats. It tells me that. I can DM them and I can ask them myself. Because realistically, we know that if we go through the label, or if we go through management, or we go through whatever, there's probably going to be an inflated cost that's going to cost us as artists, which will then be passed on from the manager. And I just think for me is like some of the best relationships I've built over the years is just through networking ourselves as artists, and it's just very organic. I think that's still so important nowadays. I had Zerb on the podcast, which I don't know if your episode is out before or after, but it's literally like his record that blew up was a reaction video on TikTok. And it changed both of their lives. It changed Hato and it changed Zerb's life, because Hato was doing reaction videos, but also wasn't that big. Zerb wasn't that big at the time. Now it's 500 million streams worldwide. And I think that's the amazing thing about what you're allowing artists to do. You're allowing artists to, like, rather than go and search on Instagram, because there's no real creator tool on Instagram that tells you, oh, this person in your category is doing really well. Like, it's really interesting, man. It's really interesting.
I have a great example of that recently happened to us, because so we launched two tools that I use there that we haven't talked about yet. One is label recommendations, where basically we look at all the labels and we see which ones are interesting to you, like which ones sign similar music, and you can also decide like what platform is interesting to you. For example, if you really want to have that #1 hit on Beatport, you can order it by Beatport, and you can see the labels that are doing extremely well on Beatport. You can also sort of, for example, Spotify, and then you find the labels that do really well on streaming on Spotify. Or you can get an overall score. So there was a label that popped up there, a French label called Uncommon, and it was recommended to me, and I looked them up. And then we recently launched another tool we call Playlist Check, where you can throw in any playlist on Spotify, and we give you like a whole overview of how healthy that playlist is, what's their rank, their global rank, how often do they update, and we give you like a pretty accurate score of how healthy we think they are, also within a genre. So I then suddenly saw that like that label, Uncommon, was recommended to me multiple times. It did really well on Spotify, and I saw that they had two really big playlists that were in the top 10 in Tech House on Spotify based on Playlist Check. And I was like, wow, that is insane. I want to like try to like reach out to them and see if we can make a release happen. And they were amazing. Their team is awesome. We signed a track with them, and that track is now doing extremely well on Spotify. This is now the first time, this is the most monthly listeners we ever had. I think by the end of this month, I think we'll be able to cross 500,000 monthly listeners for the first time off of that record, but and also off of a couple other records, because now another label that we previously signed was now did a trade with them where they placed one of their records in their playlist, and they placed one like another one of ours in there. So we're winning on all fronts, and both labels are winning. So it's great that this all worked out that way, and it was all based off seeing it in the data, where I was like, that label could do really well for us, and ultimately they really enjoyed our music. Now I actually even played the event during ADE. So it was actually like a very interesting chain of events, seeing this happen and coming to life, And so I can highly recommend, obviously, anyone to dive in a little bit, seeing why certain labels are doing well or how they're doing well, and maybe reaching out and just trying. Ultimately it doesn't hurt. I think the hardest part is always the reaching out part, because that's time consuming, that's the grinding bit. But ultimately, if you think about you spending hours on end in the studio making your music, you should also dedicate a couple of hours to then try and promote it or find the right people to promote it.
You should spend more time promoting it than you do make it, if I'm totally honest with you. And from what I'm seeing now is like, it's a conversation I'm having with my marketing team, is like, okay, you write the records. Once the record's out, you now spend the next, it goes back to literally what we were saying right at the beginning of this conversation, right? The first time everyone hears the record, they don't like it. The second time they hear it, they are like, okay, let me listen a bit more. The third time they listen to it, okay, I like this. Fourth time they listen to it, yeah, this is part of my daily life. Fifth time they start sharing it to other people. And okay, your release didn't do well in the first 2 weeks, let's move on to the next record. And I just think that is so not a thing. Like, if we look at any product outside of business, outside of music, right? I don't know, this camera, right? The amount of fucking times, right? Yeah, the amount of times I've had ads on Instagram telling me to buy this and why this is so good.
Yeah.
Like, I then eventually bought it. And I think this is the thing, is that as artists, that we really need to understand the level of, we can't expect everybody's attention 24/7. So we have to just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing.
It's very interesting because labels now are this like annoying cycle where they have music coming out each Friday. They dedicate a couple of posts in that week to you, and that's it. And then the next Friday, they don't care anymore. And unless your record has done extremely well in these first 7 days, which is really difficult to achieve because it's crowded, there's a lot of like other records that come out each week. If you just by a chance don't make it into the editorials or get featured on Beatport, then you're sort of screwed, right? And ultimately now the Spotify algorithm also shifted a lot, where it's no longer just about streams. It's a lot about the sharing signals. It's about signals coming from the social networks for you sharing to them or coming back from them into the record. And, that's so much more of an interesting data point for them, because they can also then link that to like the listener that shared it or that came back from it. So it's really interesting. Ultimately, if you make music that people want to share and keep sharing it, that's and keep listening, that's more valuable than having that quick spike for a couple of days and that's it.
I agree.
Almost as an artist, you need to make it sort of like challenge to tell the label what they need to do, constantly be on their ass to do more for your release, because otherwise they don't. Ask them to reshare everything that you do, because oftentimes they don't even do that. Even though you tag them, they don't even freaking share it, which also doesn't make sense. They should be the ones marketing it. And then also ask them that if the release is already older than a week, that they would still share it, because some labels don't, and that's super annoying. And like, I don't understand, why you wouldn't do that. Ultimately, you want to help the artist. You want to make sure every release is a success, right? But I guess they also run a business. They're also on like a tight schedule, and I don't know. But
the issue with where we're at with record labels now is that you actually, as an artist, I don't think you necessarily, if you want records to be successful, I don't think signing to a record label is necessarily the best thing. I think if you're willing to market your records as an independent artist, the record label doesn't really hold anything. The only thing a record label, there's multiple things a record label brings to the table. Associations, right? If you want to sign to Adam Bay, if you want to be associated with Adam Bay, okay, well, who are we going to sign to? Like True Soul and Drum Code. Almost what you're getting as a label. But if you're signing to a mini major, right? Or like a major independent. There's multiple of them in the music industry now, or even a major. Like realistically, you're just waiting for your record to do well so that they can chuck a load of money when they see it's doing well. But you have, as an artist, you have to go and promote it because that's just not. When a record label is releasing 20 records a week every Friday, they don't have the manpower to promote your record. It's just you have to get it to a point where the label goes, if this is actually going somewhere, let's spend a bunch of money.
I think also the most important thing is about any record is that you have to tell your listeners and your fans why they should care about that record, and you should tell them a story. If you just put out a track and just say, oh, here's my cool new track, there's no association with it, right? If we say now, hey, we have this cool new release, we actually played at Fusion Festival for the first time this summer, and in the crowd was Oliver Koletsky, and he sent us an email afterwards, and he specifically asked for that track because he loved it so much and he loved our set. He wanted it, and now we're releasing it together and make it this really special thing. Then suddenly everyone's like, "Wow, this is a cool story," and this happened, and they can tell their friend about it when they play the tune to them, and then they have something to connect with, right? Something personal. But if you don't do that and you just like share the cover artwork of the label, some random animation or some AI generated art, and then like there's nothing to latch onto, right? And I also recommend any artist now use the canvas to show a video of yourself and not just of like some 2D like text or something like this, right? Because ultimately people want to see you and they want to know who you are and how you made the track or how you perform, and not just, you know, some random animation or something, right?
It is literally just the most selfish tool for yourself.
That's what I said from the beginning. Whoops.
I love it, man. That's great. Like if I look at everything that I want to do outside of music, yes, you benefit people whilst making it, but realistically, you benefit for yourself. Like I'm in the process of making a fragrance, like a fragrance line, completely out of music with like another friend.
Wow.
But like I'm absolutely obsessed with fragrance. So why would I not? And then the benefit is that people smell good afterwards.
I would love a tester.
I'll send you some.
Heck yeah.
But I think like, yeah, like if somebody's listening now and they're like, I've got a really good idea, right? Like I want to start a business outside of music, in music, or whatever that is. How does one start? Because I think obviously I don't really want to go too deep into your history, but you achieved a lot in business before you got into this, right? You did your YouTube licensing and all of that, and you had a very successful business before 1001 and Songstats. So how does one start nowadays in 2025?
The cool thing is you probably have the best resources available to you that you could ever ask for. You have AI, which is one of the most powerful tools that has not been around, but the risk is that also everyone else has that, right? With Songstats now, we're specifically trying to build tools that cannot just be vibe coded, because we don't just want to create something that can like literally anyone can create within a week or something, right? So we rather spend a month or 2 months or half a year or a year to build something that no one else can build and only we can do based on like our team and our infrastructure. So think about that as well, because if you can build something that someone else can replicate within a couple of like days, you know, then your idea is, unfortunately, you can't really protect ideas nowadays. That's the unfortunate truth. You know, we have other companies copying a lot what we are doing. We're usually the ones innovating in this space, and it's actually wild how much we're being copied. It's crazy, but ultimately, I want to say just start. If you need more people, find people that you trust, that you want to like, you know, that you can create a team with. You know, that's what I did. I'm so grateful for the 1001 Tracklists core team that we built on top of this. You know, I mean, we're all super dedicated, hardworking individuals. You know, and then from there, you just love to the process. You know, love to build. I mean, ultimately, we never knew that any of this was going to be successful. Honestly, there was always risks. Just take the risks and just do it. I think it's like really, and just try. Like the worst thing that can happen is that you are not successful with it. But the great thing that you do is you try it and you learn so much along the way. I would say now, if I had to hire someone, I'd rather hire someone that had a failed startup that then learned so much from this than someone who was just executing someone else's vision for like a couple of years. Because ultimately, as a founder or as someone who wants to start something new, you will have to wear so many hats. One day you will be the designer. One day you will look at logos. One day you will, work on code. One day you will work on customer support. There's always something new, or on the product itself, or whatever it is, right? And it's so satisfying in my mind, and that's what keeps me going. I love the process, right? And that's also the reason why Songstats I don't think will ever be done, right? Like I think there's always some cool idea that we can work on next, and that is the intriguing part of all of this, I find. And it's the same thing with music and Don't Blink. For me, Don't Blink is already successful in its own right. I don't have to prove anything to anyone, right? Like I think if I would want Don't Blink to grow, I would want it, of course you always want the respect, and you want to sit at the table with the greats in a way, right? But ultimately, we want to stay true to our music, want to keep like innovating in our space there, not copying ourselves and not copying others, as I said, staying original, working on our sets, our shows. And then eventually people will, notice this and be excited to see us, and that's that I think what you should stay true to. I hope that that's not too deep or anything.
No, man, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love that. How many times have you failed?
Plenty. I mean,
Tell me your biggest fail.
well, the biggest fail was right from the get-go. We launched a channel, right? Our very first YouTube channel was with me and two friends. We started it. It grew to over 100,000 subscribers within like 2 years. Never made a cent from it because it was all like claimed by labels, and then they took it down. From one day to another, it was strike down and we had nothing. Everything that we worked for 2 years was just gone. And it's like, okay, that can be super discouraging, right? One of my friends stopped and he never did anything again in music, right? And like, I was like, no, I think there's a better way of doing it. How about, there's a market there. Otherwise, why would 100,000 people subscribe to this? And obviously it's risky to do it. There was always a bit of the risk that maybe one of the labels would potentially like sue us or something for using their music if we didn't have the right licenses. There was always a risk, because this was sort of the Wild West, and still is, theoretically now you could still get sued for using someone's music in your mixtape, right? But the music industry has evolved in a way where they understand that this is good promotion, the same way that the gaming industry understood that actually like streamers are good promotion for their video games, And so, you don't want to fight them because it's actually bad for your own reputation now, right? So ultimately, but that wasn't clear back then, right? Like, so I think there was plenty of risks during that time. And, I instead reached out to Spinning Record and Armada and all of these labels and tried to get licensing deals with all of these, right? That was at the very beginning, right? But then along the way, we launched things that were fails. I want to say that probably my previous artist project, I mean, it was fun. It was a professional hobby, I want to say, but it was certainly all over the place. It didn't have the right direction. And ultimately, it was also the right time to just say, it's over now, and we now have Don't Blink, and I want to really focus on this. You cannot keep doing everything all at once, like there's the right time to say that project is in the past now. It's a part of my past, but and it was fun at that time, but I don't think it was successful either, but so and
I
plenty
guess
of great releases where I thought the music was so good, didn't go anywhere, And then some weird track that you didn't believe in, suddenly that track does so well. It's crazy, huh?
always away, man, always away. My biggest streaming record was literally that. It was like an accident of like Patrick, I've said this multiple times, but Patrick Toppin asked me to make an EP. I sent him an EP and he was like, mate, can you make one like you did last time? And I was like, okay, cool. Wrote a record in 30 minutes and sent it to him 2 weeks later because I didn't want him to think that I like just made it straight away. And yeah, it became my biggest streamer.
There you go.
I guess my thing is when do you know is a good time to call quits on a project and end it?
Great question. So actually, that channel got taken down when I was still very young. Like I think I was 17 at that time. That was like a big shock, but it also made me quite careful on how I approached the future things in my life. So actually the next channel you said like, we didn't really talk so much about that, but like the next channel, we actually then grew on the back of licenses, but we grew it to over 1 million within also about 2 years. So the first one, 2 years to 100,000, the second one, 2 years to 1 million. And this was back when YouTube was still relatively small, right? And I made not a single dime off of that channel. At that point, it had over 1 million subscribers. I never made anything off of it. And I was thinking, look, this thing could get taken down again tomorrow, right? And I was really scared about that. So actually, I found someone to buy the channel off of me, and or someone actually made me an offer on it, and I said yes. I mean, I was 19 years old, but I got about 25,000 for that channel, which for me was a lot of money. But I need to say that like it kickstarted the next venture that I went into and stuff. So it was great for me. But ultimately, the guy who purchased that 1 million subscriber channel for 25K also had a really good deal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he did.
So, but it was the right time to call quits on it because it didn't go anywhere. There was no money to be made with it. There was only the risk that it gets taken down again, you know. So ultimately, these are hard decisions in life, you know. They don't come easy, you know. But you need to know when it's the right time and to let go. That isn't easy to let go. And then obviously the next step is to start something new off of that back. So yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe I got acquainted to it early by that big shock, you know. My mom has that saying, I think she's saying like, it's a German saying, I don't know how it translates, but it's like better a shock with a quick ending than a never ending shock, right?
100%.
So sometimes, I don't know if it like translates well, but yeah, it sort of is it's the right thing, you know. If it drags on, it's better to finish it, you know, that's it.
Don't drag it out. Yeah, 100%. It's that famous relationship, right? Is like, it's better to end things.
Yeah.
It's better to have a really, really shit end than drag a really, really shit end out for 2 years. It's just like, get out. I've started to ask everybody as like a last question for the podcast. One piece of advice would you like to put out there to the world?
Whoever wants to become an artist and make music, the unfortunate truth is that you also have to become a content creator. I think that was an oversight of mine for the last 10 years. And I think I put a blind eye on purpose because I didn't want to be in front of a camera for a long time. You know, I like to build things and, you know, that's what gives me joy. I don't like to consume social media so much. It's just like not really fulfilling me. You know, I'm not someone that's driven by numbers, and I advise everyone not to make that, you know, your endorphin, like source of endorphin, you know, like find real experiences and real things that fulfill you. But ultimately now, if you want to have a successful artist career, you have to be comfortable in front of a camera. You have to be comfortable telling a story and being yourself and being personal. Because what's happening is that there's so much AI coming and there's so much music flooding the market that actually the craft of making music is no longer, or will go down in value more and more. And instead, what's becoming more and more valuable is who you are as a person and how you present yourself as a person. And that's what ultimately people connect with. So that's, I think, my advice that I can give this year. Let's see where it's developing in 5 years when AI is taking over everything. But
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for creating Songstats and the 1001 Tracklist crew. Like, what you guys have done for the modern music industry is really important. And genuinely, thank you very much for it. And thanks for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you, Will. And thank you for trusting us and having us being your sponsor and your trusted app.
Big love. Let's, if you're still listening now, then go click and subscribe to Songstats. There's a discount code in the... It's not even the bio anymore, is it? It's in the description. Yeah, it's in the description.
Yep, it's right there. Will Clarke 10, I think it is. 10% discount for life.
Something
Let's
like
go.
that. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Stay on.
Thanks, Will.